It was requested by a few within my inner circle to make a how to play video for the new 9th edition of Warhammer 40,000. It can be daunting to go through 26 plus pages of core rules to learn the fundamentals of a game, especially for those unfamiliar with it or similar tabletop wargames. But going through those rules along with some visual examples should definitely make that easier. So here's the start of a new series, How to Play Warhammer 40,000, 9th edition. In this series, we are going to cover the core rules primer with visual aids to teach you how to play Warhammer 40k 9th edition. However, there will be a few areas covered beyond the primer, mainly because I feel these are fundamental pieces of the game's design. And since this is a how-to-play video, it feels illogical not to include them. These include command points, the 7 core stratagems, and strategic reserves. Ideally, this series will be most valuable to newcomers, but even if you are a veteran of editions past, there is sure to be some value gained. This video will cover the basics, the core definitions and framing, which will establish the foundation needed for the subsequent videos as we go through the battle round. Warhammer 40k is a game of rules and exceptions to those rules. This occurs on multiple layers across the game's design. As an example, we can look at the rule, units cannot shoot or charge if they advanced in the movement phase. And even at the core rules level we have an exception. That is, units can shoot weapons of the assault type, even if they advanced. But beyond the core rules, entire factions as well as units often have exceptions provided by special abilities, such as the case with these alien genestealers, which can advance and charge even though the core rules state that a unit which advances cannot charge. And while you may not have the context for all of this at the moment, my point is that these exceptions will be encountered as you engage in games of Warhammer 40k, and I think it's worthwhile to keep that in mind as you go about interpreting rules. Games of Warhammer 40,000 are structured around missions. Defined in various publications, the mission will specify parameters for army composition, the battlefield, and deployment. It will indicate special rules and most importantly establish the victory conditions for the combatants. In the simplest terms, an army is a collection of miniatures under your command. In this series, many of the examples will feature my Space Marine chapter, the Firekeepers, which are successors of the Salamanders chapter. For the sake of simplicity, I will be treating them as a Salamander's army. The special rules for an army can be found inside of the publications tied to them. A Salamander's army makes use of the Space Marines Codex and the Salamander's supplement. An army is composed of units. Each unit has values associated with it as specified using its power or points cost, and the sum of these values defines an army's power level or points cost. All the qualities of a unit can be found on its datasheet, which looks similar to this. We can see the unit name, its battlefield role, and power rating, as well as its stat profiles, those being move, weapon skill, ballistic skill, strength, toughness, wounds, attacks, leadership, and save, as well as its composition data, war gear options, abilities, and their weapon data, which has their own set of stat profiles: range, type, strength, armor penetration, damage, and any abilities. At the very bottom of a unit's datasheet are their keywords, acting effectively as tags which define the unit as valid for various game mechanics. Sometimes a unit's datasheet will have a subfaction tag in brackets, indicating that this is to be defined by the player. In the case of my Space Marine army, I replaced the chapter keyword with the Salamander's keyword on my unit's datasheets. Since all the units in my army have the Salamander's keyword, it's considered a Salamander's army, and is now valid for a variety of Salamander's specific rules. Beyond army construction, keywords are used by specific rules to tag units for targeted functionality. For example, this Salamander's captain has the ability Rites of Battle, which affects friendly Salamander's units within 6 inches. Because the intercessors are Salamanders, they now benefit from this captain's aura. Also, it's worth mentioning this aura affects the captain himself, as he also has the Salamander's keyword and is within 6 inches. Rules will often refer to friendly or enemy models and units. To clarify, friendly models are all models in the same army. Enemy models are all models in your opponent's army. Friendly units are all units in the same army. Enemy units are all units in your opponent's army. And all units are all models refers to all units or models in both players' armies. Looking back to our captain example, Rites of Battle affects friendly chapter, or in this case, Salamander's units, referring to Salamander's units in the same army. which is stated thusly in the event I play my salamanders against another player's salamanders army. Coherency only affects units made up of multiple models, and refers to how far apart they are from each other. Such units must always end any sort of move within coherency. To be valid for coherency, units must be arranged as a single group, each model within 2 inches horizontally and 5 inches vertically of another model in the unit. Coherency requires units with 6 or more models, like with this unit of demonettes, for each model to be within coherency of at least 2 other models from their own unit. It means larger units cannot string out in a line in the same way smaller units can, and for lack of a better term, need to maintain a sort of group formation. Engagement range refers to the area at which models are in effective melee combat with each other. If a model is within 1 inch horizontally and 5 inches vertically of an enemy model, then those models are within engagement range with each other, and by extension, both of those models' units are considered to be within engagement range of an enemy unit. Some rules will require you to verify a unit's strength. This again only affects units comprised of multiple models. When a unit starts the game, it's at its starting strength. If enough models are removed to drop it below half its starting strength, it is considered to be below half strength. Now a few loose ends to wrap up this section. To start, measuring distances. Often rules will specify distances to be verified. In Warhammer 40k, distances are measured in inches, and are always measured using the closest points between bases or hulls. Some units do not have bases, like this Land Raider, and some units like this Repulsor specify on its datasheet to measure from its hull even though it technically has a base. If 2 units are determined to be equidistant, the player resolving the rule may choose which is closest, and distances can be measured at any time. Sometimes rules specify models and units to be within or wholly within. To clarify these terms, using a captain as a point of origin, within refers to any point of a model's base or hull being within the specified distance, and wholly within refers to the entirety of a model's base or hull being within the specified distance. Referring back to our captain's Rights of Battle aura, it specifies that it applies to models whilst their unit is within 6 inches of this model. That means only one model needs to be within for the whole unit to gain the benefit of Rights of Battle. In summary, model within is any part of the model's base or hull. Model wholly within is every part of a model's base or hull. Unit within is any model within. And unit wholly within would require every model to be wholly within. Warhammer 40k is played with 6-sided dice, referred to in the rules as a d6. If a rule refers to a d3, you can simply use a d6 and divide the result by 2, rounding up. Modifiers that come into play with dice rolls are cumulative, and follow the bedmass orders of operation, and always round fractions up after modifiers have been applied. Often abilities or rules will enable you to re-roll, typically in your favor, allowing you to minimize the randomness or RNG of dice. And wouldn't you know it, such is the case with our captain's Rights of Battle ability. Note that unless stated otherwise, rules that allow a reroll where multiple dice were used require you to reroll all the dice that were part of that roll. Rerolls are applied before modifiers. Let's look at Rights of Battle as an example, which allows units nearby to reroll hit rolls of 1. Assuming the dice rolled was a 2, being affected by a -1 modifier, I would not be able to leverage the reroll provided by Rights of Battle. A die can never be rerolled more than once, not counting rolls that go out of bounds, or which are cocked by terrain or other models. Some rules require players to roll off. Simply, both players roll a d6, rerolling ties. The highest result wins. Unmodified dice refers to the result after rerolls but before modifiers. And lastly, some rules will create situations where multiple rules are to be resolved at the same time. The player whose turn is taking place determines the order to resolve those rules. If this arises before or after the battle, meaning outside of either player's turn, both players roll off and the winner decides what order the rules are resolved. And that's it for the basics. With the fundamentals in place, we can now begin to get into the core of how to play. If you enjoyed this video or found it useful, give it a like. And if you want to help this channel grow, please subscribe. And with that, I'll hope to see you guys in the next one.